Let's quickly get to the Cronulla Sharks for season 2023. So 2022, you'd have to say success by any measure. And I think it was the manner in which they went about it. You can talk all about how strong was the opposition they played and the vagaries of the draw. But for them to do what they did, the Cronulla Sharks did very well indeed. Craig Fitzgibbon announced himself, probably fulfilled the thought around what he was going to be and what everyone expected as Craig Fitzgibbon as a coach. My thoughts on the Sharks is this, Mick. When I look at who's new to the squad, who's adding something, Oregon Kaufusi is where it starts and ends.
Yes. He's a good signing, though.
No doubt. But
there hasn't been there's not a lot out either for their squad. So it's a pretty stable squad, and they had their big splurge headed into 2022.
Yep.
That's where they had their bit of a signing spree, lots of additions, headlined by Nico Hines, Fanuc and McInnes. So there was a lot of new players into that squad. What they brought in 2022, Cronulla, was what Cronulla had success a few years ago. They were tough, they were gritty. They weren't, when you go back to Paul Gallen, Michael Ennis, Luke Lewis, those sort of players where when you played Cronulla in that, around that 16 period, you had to beat them. They were never going to beat themselves.
Yep.
And there was a lot of that about the Sharks in 2022. So I think they've laid the platform for a good season. They got a full year out of Matt Moylan for the first time.
Can you do that again?
He looked good.
Didn't he?
He looked really, really good. Nico Hines, 12 months on from his stellar season, his first year at the club. I think Blake Brayley showed that he's got that attacking game that can cause some defenders some real problems around that ruck. Cameron McInnes, 12 months after his ACL as well, so he's back to full fitness. And their outside backs, I really like the Katoa, Renato Militalo wing on either side. I think they're probably coming out of their own end. I think they're the best carriers in terms of the combination in the game.
Ooh. Okay.
In terms of both.
Yeah. As a deal, Katoa's, okay, all right. I think it's interesting around their spine again, and we talk about it all the time. But we're looking for that season again from Moylan.
Yes.
So Nico Hines now, people do have a scouting report on Nico Hines, right, and what he does. I think Blake Brayley has the ability to be a New South Wales State of Origin hooker.
Agreed.
So I think that's with Damien Cook and Api Coruscant a lot older than him. Then I think absolutely. It's really interesting around fullback. So Will Kennedy and he's a good player. I'm not saying he's not NRL quality, but then you've got guys like Cade Dykes and Kyle Iro who are going to be putting pressure on there. So that's a good thing to have, a depth of squad for that one, but you just wonder how patient those guys can be. Lockie Miller is another one there, but whether he's there at the club or not. They finished second, 18-6.
And they finished second, and you never really thought they found their top flight football, like their best. I felt like that they performed really well and were really consistent, and the difference between their best and their worst was not a lot, but I just didn't think that they clicked into gear, and they faded a little bit at the back end.
Straight out semi-finals, loss to that one.
That Cowboys game was huge.
I remember seeing them play on a Friday night. It was a 6 p.m. game, and they played against the Newcastle Knights.
Yep.
And it was a really strong breeze, as it can be down there at Shark Park, and they were almost perfect. Kalen Ponga had a really poor game for Newcastle. They just didn't get involved. But in difficult conditions, they were crisp with their passing. Defensively, they were really strong. So it's almost like the Cronulla Sharks mirror their coach, Craig Fitzgibbon, in that they got the best out of themselves.
Yep.
But without the addition of new players, and they've lost Fafita, Tolman. Now, how big a loss those two guys are, we'll have to wait and see, and they've got Kaufusi. But I don't see where the improvement to the squad comes. I look at this squad and think they needed a player to come in to lift them to the next level.
Yeah.
And they haven't got that.
Yeah, the improvement has to come from within. You're looking at like the Teague Wiltons of the world. Does Royce Hunt go to another level? Does, Jesse Raymond had such a flat period after, when he went to Newcastle for that season and came back, and he still wasn't as good as he was before he left. And I thought he was back to showing something last year. Sifa Talakai, can he play better? Can they get that middle period that forced him into the Origin arena back? into playing consistent week in, week out footy. He was banged up at the end of the season. Really took its toll on him and his body. So as long as he's refreshed and ready to go, I think they'll get some benefit, long-term, season-long benefit out of him as well.
Is he a centre? Like, if you look at their best side, is he a centre?
I think so.
I don't know whether he's a centre.
I think so.
I mean, every other centre that plays against him doesn't want him to be a centre.
Yeah.
I know that, but it's interesting. Can get caught out defensively.
They've got Britton Nakora, Teague Wilton, Wade Graham as their three sort of front-line edges.
Yep.
So I think he does slot in the centres there.
I thought it was really interesting that Wade Graham, it's not often you see this with an athlete. He really knew his place. He took a reduced contract. He signed a 1-year deal. He recognised that from a head injury point of view, he needs to be really careful around that. But he also recognised the contribution that he is making or isn't making to the side and not wanting to hold people back and being a burden from a salary cap point of view. So I thought that's really interesting for a player to acknowledge that.
And the suggestions are he may not even start the year in the top 13. He'll be in the 17, but may play a role in a reduced role with Teague Wilton starting.
And I think that's absolutely fair enough too, because I think there were signs, especially in that South Sydney semi-final, where Wade was off the pace big time.
It was the last game of the regular season against Newcastle for me, and I just watched him and I was like, ooh.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, we're not like he's had 16 years in the NRL.
Yeah, real sensational career.
17. But you just get to a point where you just need to be careful. All right. You have him in your top 8.
Yes.
Where? Roughly. Bottom?
Bottom of the 8.
Okay. I got him 7th.
Yeah.
I got the Sharks. So going from 2nd to 7th without the addition of too many new players.